Yo, what's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here with Mike Kaye, the latest episode of the No Huddle Show.
You sound so enthused, man.
I'm tired, man. And I just had a weird stomach pain, I told you.
Yeah, you did.
It was a light day, training camp today. I guess it's probably been almost a week since we did another episode, but there's been a decent amount happening. But today, the most relevant thing that happened is they played Grateful Dead for the first 30 minutes of practice. It was like an entire Grateful Dead playlist, and there was like a funny moment where Deshaun walked over to the music guy. He's like, all right, that's enough. Because he wanted something more bumping. And I guess Malcolm Jenkins is trying to expand his musical repertoire, and he's the reason why they had Grateful Dead playing. I was talking with the Reuben Frank and I think Jeff McClain, and we kind of were guessing it was Corey Unlund because that's kind of his vibe. But I guess Malcolm Jenkins trying to expand it, so I don't know if the rest of the team was feeling it, because it's obviously great music, but it's not like hyped practice music.
Don't bury the lead. Before that, Jackson and Doug Peterson got into a playful banter before.
Did they? I didn't even see that.
So
about the music?
Yeah, they were going back and forth. And a reporter, I forgot who, asked me, hey, I think Doug and Deshaun I think it's in good spirits, but I think they just got into a really bad argument.
Are you saying they got into a fight? Is that what we're saying?
Well,
they literally fought each other?
Somebody who would have really enjoyed hyping that up. But yes, he, now that I recall. But so Jackson went across the field after a kickoff return drill and playfully talked to his assistant. It was a very weird conversation, and then at one point Doug Peterson called his assistant over, and you could hear his assistant say, do you want me to switch it back? And then it never switched back, so I guess Deshaun won the day. in theory, that's the lesson learned.
So I guess it's the captains that, maybe that's a story down the line, I'm sure somebody's written it, but who picks the playlist, because it's especially this offseason, it's been the most random collection of their days versus the usual hip-hop and stuff. But then there'll be all country music. There'll be there was house music one day, which the techno and all the beats dropping and stuff. I'm like, am I in Vegas right now? It's just I don't know. They literally much pass it around the locker room and then they put the music on.
I think Bruce Hector went to an Express and was like, you know what? We've got to have some party music.
We need some Avicii. Rest in peace.
So. I don't know how
did I ruin your thought there?
I don't know how to transition after that. Something also to take away from today is that
the Go Birds Water Ice was there today.
Yeah.
Apple and pear flavored.
Oh, is that what it actually is?
Yeah, we're not sponsored by them. I don't know. I'm telling you guys that. Actually, it's pretty good. But anyway.
Yeah. Anyway,
Rita, sponsor us.
So that'd be good. We're always about that sponsorship. Banking.
All the sponsors we have on our show right now.
Yeah. So anyway, Zach, what did stick out today is how much injuries piling up have impacted formations and
mainly on defense. Yeah.
Yeah. So since we last did a pod, Hill suffered an MCL sprain that's probably going to keep him out for a few games of the regular season. That's kind of big news because he was probably having the best camp of any player defensively outside of maybe Sidney Jones.
He was one of the breakout stars at camp.
Yeah, and he was the lone constant at linebacker for a while because Nigel Bradham has been
the practice he suffered the injury. He had an awesome PBU at the goal line on Carson Wentz. He's had a few of those. He's picked them off. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Anyway, so their cat and mouse game's been fun, but now Nathan Gary's got to step up, and he's been one of the first team nickel linebackers for a while with Nigel Bradham sideline. But now it seems like Nate Gary's the next guy up. He's the guy that's taking on probably the bulk of the work. Next to him is Zack Brown, who I have not seen him stand out one bit. That's the thing. Yes, there's a lot of depth here, but there are certain guys that have...
linebacker?
No.
Oh, you're saying all across the team.
Across the team.
So I was going to say...
Yeah, across the team.
I would say maybe we overestimated the depth they had at linebacker coming into camp.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think a lot of guys you're projecting, and Zack Brown's a guy that's been projected as a very key starter. He has not proven that he can be that dude yet. He is a veteran. Maybe it's taking a little while to learn different terminologies, whatever. But he and LJ Fort took base snaps opposite Nate Gary today, or next to, I guess you could say.
Yeah, Fort was in the mic, which was a little interesting.
Well, because he's been calling plays in the second team.
And it was him and TJ Edwards in base on the second team.
Yeah, so, look, guys are going to come up. Paul Warlow's sideline, Nigel Bradham's sideline, Kamu Hill. But remember, this is also a unit where they were going to flip-flop and mix-match personnel, which could help them moving forward. Another guy that was out of practice today was Sheldon Gibson, who suffered an ankle injury during the Sunday practice. Joe Osman, a guy who suffered a knee injury during the Sunday practice. Both those guys are going to be worth monitoring. It seems like they're both fighting for jobs, but if those turn out to be major injuries, we could be seeing the end of both their tenures, or they could be on IR.
I feel like a safe bet to say Gibson probably isn't going to play for the Eagles in the regular season ever again.
Yeah.
Osman was really making a case for himself. They needed to see it in games. That one was tough. But you saw when he went down, he got carted off the field, and probably 10 to 15 teammates came up to shake his hand, including Carson Wentz. This is a good group of guys that all seem to respect each other, so that's going to happen when a guy suffers a serious injury. But the fact that this is a walk-on dude from Central Michigan getting that kind of love says a lot about what everybody feels about him. But yeah, like Zack Brown, if not for Camus getting injured, probably saved his job, honestly.
Probably.
I've been saying he was kind of an under-radar guy that could get cut.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it wouldn't happen before the end of the preseason or anything, but at the very least, he's going to get a chance to snag one of those 2 starting spots, or the starting spot next to Bradham whenever he gets back. We haven't really heard any updates about him, actually.
Yeah, it's been kind of a slow burn.
Yeah, same with Cox, but I don't think they're very worried about Cox, it sounds like. But so
there's positive news, though, from an injury front. Rodney McLeod and Corey Clement were both in team drills today, which I think is something that's definitely notable because Clement is a guy who is their most proficient pass catcher out of the backfield. Not that that's really saying much, outside of maybe Darren Sproles.
Yeah.
So,
McLeod's the more important one to be back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and they've taken their time with him, and I think they've done right by him, and they both look pretty good today. Yeah. McLeod, you can tell, is still getting his druthers, but yeah, I guess he doesn't play in the first couple preseason games. Maybe I know that he's talked about wanting to play in the third one, but I imagine they go pretty light preseason, especially for most of those veteran guys. That's kind of across the NFL now. We'll get in a little bit about the preseason game on Thursday, but I want to do a little stock up, stock down, because we've had 10 practices at training camp. There's been a lot of developments. We've talked a lot about the same guys, and I feel like we'll probably both have a similar feeling about who's up, who's down. But we'll start with one who's been the talk of the team the last couple of days in particular. I'd say Miles Sanders is a stock-up era. I know you were high on him during the pre-draft process. I think you and I were talking earlier, and he's even exceeded your expectations. I still think all these LaShawn McCoy comparisons, people need to pump the brakes a little bit this early. He still has a long way to go in terms of catching the ball. He had a bad drop today. Pass protection. Ball security's been fine, but hasn't really been full contact. But I started training camp thinking people were being overzealous with him, and now I'm starting to become overzealous with him because he just has a different gear than these other guys. He's really fun to watch. They haven't had a running back like him since probably McCoy. Yeah, he's definitely on a different wavelength than everybody else. I still think Jordan Howard's a starter to start the season. But we've seen a lot less of him. You know what I mean?
He still gets all the goal line and stuff like that. But yeah, it's him and Sanders are the first team guys, clearly. The other guys have all been second team.
Right.
Sproles too, I guess.
Right. So I think, he's going to be this year you're going to see a committee. I think next year, that committee is completely just thrown.
I don't know if they'd ever go away from committee with Doug Peterson, but it'll be the most bell cow they've ever had under Doug.
Fair. But, you look at it, if Sproles retires and Jordan Howard's not back and maybe Corey...
it's not that hard to find running backs.
It's not, but I think this kid's going to be really, really good.
I'm not disputing that.
I do think they'll still... there'll be a third down guy, but I think he's going to be a bell. There's never been an actual bell cow in this running back system under Doug Peterson.
Yeah.
My up guy would definitely be Sidney Jones. I think Sidney Jones has really played very well. He's had at least 3 interceptions that I can recall. He's broken up a plethora of passes. He's a guy that I think is playing like what they thought they got when they drafted him in the second round a few years ago. That said, he's got to continue to stay healthy. They've got him playing nickel a lot, which is an interesting situation. But, that could switch off once Ronald Darby's back. It could be that they want to just cross-train him because they know Maddox can already play nickel. And also, if, there's an issue with the free safety position, at some point Maddox could find his way back there, and then they'll need a new nickel guy with Cravon LeBlanc injured. he's battling Rasul Douglas for an outside position. This is going to be really interesting because I think if Rasul Douglas loses the competition, you probably are in a situation where, you've got a tradable asset. I'd be very interested to see how they handle that towards the trade deadline.
Well, the health of the cornerbacks, it would be closer to week 6.
Right, yeah, I don't think you're trading him. I think if you're...
Because most likely both of them are going to be playing a lot week 1.
Right, I think if you're thinking about trading him during training camp, you're out of your mind.
Unless it's like an offer that blows away, yeah.
Right, which I don't think they're going to get.
Well, and so I think Rasul and him kind of going, because Rasul's also had a great training camp.
Yes, he has.
And if the season were starting tomorrow, I still think Rasul would start over Sidney Jones.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think...
he has more of the experience at this point, actually.
Yeah, and I think, while Sidney's made the splashier plays, Rasul's been extremely consistent. He has done a pretty good job of shutting his side of the field down. He's had some great battles with Alshon Jeffrey. I think the only guy he struggled against is Deshaun Jackson, but everybody and their mother has just, struggled.
Avante's been the one who's done the best against Deshaun, by the way.
Well... Yeah, from a speed standpoint, I would...
Especially in those red zone drills, he tends to stop him.
Yeah, he's also had his moments, too, where Deshaun's just Deshaun.
Yeah. That's just going to happen, yeah. We don't need to... You can just assume that Deshaun's in stock up. I don't think we need to talk too much about him again.
Yeah, I don't consider... guys that are going to be, important to the team, I typically don't...
Yeah, because their stock's already high.
Yeah, you already know what they can do. When everybody's talking about how great... somebody like Carson Wentz is doing, well, that's expected.
He can only get stocked down pretty much in practice.
Yeah, it's unfair.
So let's do a couple stock downs. So the first one, I got Stefan Wisniewski. It's not like you and I were very high on him to begin with, but he's been really bad. They basically moved him out of center because he had so many bad snaps. He's had almost every practice when he plays center. So today, Jason Kelsey rested, and Sayamalo came in at center, which they did last week. The Eagles have a lot of these undrafted guys. Some of them, they gave them pretty good bonuses. If Nate Herbig or Sua Opeta outplays Wisniewski in the preseason, it's not outlandish to think they cut him.
Yeah, I don't think it's outlandish at all. As a matter of fact, it's leaning towards probable, in my opinion.
If it was right now, yeah.
Yeah, he has not played particularly well. He hasn't snapped the ball well, as you said. I told you guys this was the problem in Jacksonville. I probably mentioned it several times.
That's why the idea that just because someone has experience doesn't mean it's good experience.
The only way it makes sense to keep him is if you're saying, hey, we're going to do a special situation where Dillard's the backup left tackle, Wisniewski's the backup left guard and center, because Isaac Seumalo can move over to center if they need him to. And then, Big V is backing up right guard and right tackle, which is very unusual in the NFL, but since they only want to keep Dillard at left tackle, maybe that's what you do, but... I don't know, man. They've had Keegan Render looking more consistent than him. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe
not every team keeps a backup center necessarily. You can move a guy over or whatever, but
for sure,
it's been tough for him. Who's a stock down guy you got? It's kind of the same chunk.
You took my guy. But
yeah, was that who you were going to go?
Yeah, I was Clayton Thorson. Clayton Thorson's been terrible.
So he's probably the number one obvious one.
Yeah, he's been terrible.
As somebody, because Jimmy did his media poll thing where he interviews all of us, or not interviews, ask us for a stock up, stock down guy. Mm-hmm. And I think his comment on Thorson was if you're a 5th round pick who has stock down, that's not a good sign.
Yeah,
you're coming in as a 5th round pick already.
Yeah, he's had a rough camp. And we've talked about it on the podcast before, but. I actually think we're underselling how terrible he's been.
Yeah.
I know that's crazy, but he had one good practice. And even that he was limited to 6 throws. So look, I'm all for developing guys and being patient, and I think that's what they're going to end up doing. But at some point you have to see some return on potential.
That starts Thursday.
Yeah, this preseason's going to be
it's going to define his career pretty much.
They offer popcorn in the Eagles press box,
they do,
and I will be only chowing. You're going to...
You might choke on a piece and you see him throw it terribly, though, so be careful.
Look, I promise you podcast listeners, Zach's going to keep track of it. I'm only going to chew popcorn during the preseason.
Why are you just assigning me to keep track of this? I have other stuff to do.
No, you don't.
We have to post up right at the end of the game.
It's true, we do. Shout outs to our editor. Anyway, Clayton's been terrible. Really, real talk, terrible. There's no way.
I blacked out for the last 30 seconds. Has he been good?
No. Okay. He is not. He is the...
What analogy are you trying to make here?
He is the specter of James Bond movies to me.
You could have done better with that.
Yeah, okay. Die Another Day? Yeah.
Sure.
That's terrible, too. They're all, whatever.
You're saying he's bad. We get it.
He's the Jurassic World 2 of Jurassic Worlds. But there's no Indiana Jones trope, so I don't really appreciate him either. Clayton, so here's the thing that's interesting. To me, do you think that Cody Kessler can make this week 1 roster? Do you think it's possible? Because I will give you a scenario afterwards where I don't.
I think it's possible. I still lean towards it not happening. I'd almost could see them just going with 2 quarterbacks and having Clayton Thorson be a phantom IR or something like that. But, with Carson Wentz's health, you kind of want a veteran quarterback in the room that knows the offense maybe. I don't know. The only scenario I really see is if they really do cut Thorson, then he has a shot, obviously. But I would lean towards Kessler not making the team.
So there's a scenario where he makes it and where they do. There's positives for him making it and positives that are not. He doesn't have 4 years of accredited NFL experience, so his contract would not be guaranteed in week 1. So it might be worth keeping him. That's the one thing that's benefiting him. The thing that I think will end up happening is he knows the offense. What they may say is, you know what? Let's see how the injury goes. If you get a better offer, sign it. If we have an injury or we feel like we need to restock the position, we'll bring you back. Or, hey, we've got a cornerback deficiency week 1, but we know Ronald Darby's going to be back in week 2. We'll bring you back. I just don't see how he's making this roster for week 1. I do think he will be on this roster at some point this season if they do cut him.
If they cut Thorson, you're saying?
Yeah. I think if they have Thorson on this roster, when you're already probably...
we have to give him a chance to play in the preseason.
Right, but I think if he struggles the way he has struggled in camp, and you're already probably keeping Mailata and Pryor as developmental players, you're looking at 3 developmental players that have shown...
Hogging 3 of the inactive roster spots.
Right, when you have all of these temporary injuries, because you remember, Camus going to be inactive.
You're going to have Camus and Cravon LeBlanc on inactive.
Right.
Unless one of them goes on IR,
So you're already playing with 51 spots, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things where...
It's going to be interesting to see how he kind of balances that when he makes the initial roster decisions. Like Josh Perkins made the team initially last year because Rodgers, it turned out, was hurt.
Yeah, so, I'll give you another stock down guy that I think we're not talking about, enough is Jordan Mailata. Jordan Mailata.
That's what I was going to say next.
Oh, okay, go.
Because you were talking about developmental guys.
Yeah.
He's been bad. But they kind of knew,
right.
The reason why it seemed like he's been bad is because the hype train went crazy last year when you had 3 national guys saying he's the next Jason Peters or whatever.
Yeah.
It was excessive. Mike Rowe, even today, he's you take anything you can see from him development wise. If there's a little thing of development you see in practice, then it's a good thing because he just started playing football last year. Doug said the same thing. We have to remember to be patient with him because he just football just came into his life a little over a year and a half ago. So the expectation that he's going to be ready to play on Sundays this season is probably still unrealistic. And I just based on the way the coaches have been talking, I still get the sense that they want to develop him and give him a chance at least. But if he goes out there in the preseason and he's letting dudes go by him and quarterbacks are getting hurt because he's really bad, maybe you try and see if you can get him through the practice squad.
To your point, I've had several players tell me, hey, I want to get 1% better each day. Well, their 1% after playing football for 20 years is different than, a guy who's been playing it for 2 years. So I think to that extent, that's really fair. Another guy we didn't bring up that actually did happen, somewhat notable news because of his name, Jonathan Cyprien. He's looked pretty good in the 3 practices that we've seen thus far. I think they're going to use him more as a hybrid. As a hybrid player. I think he's a guy that's kind of contesting LJ Ford in that, hey, he's going to play a lot of special teams. He could play dime linebacker sort of thing. You know what I mean? So I think it's an interesting signing. If he works out, he works out. If he doesn't, he doesn't. It just seems like kind of a flyer that needed to happen only because you want to continue to evolve as a defense and you want to find ways to have enough insurance on defense. Like, we talk about it all the time. Nobody can do what Malcolm Jenkins does as far as move to linebacker and play nickel and do all that stuff. Cyprien can't play nickel. He can't play free safety, but he can do two of the jobs that Jenkins plays, which in turn kind of highlights how impressive Jenkins is. So I think Cyprien's an interesting addition. He made a play during the Sunday scrimmage where he forced a fumble on Josh Adams and covered the ball.
They credit him as Godwin Igwebuike.
Yeah, I know.
I was like so confused. I'm like,
I
could have sworn.
I was sitting on the complete opposite end of because I was being antisocial, and I was thinking to myself, "Wait, it was very
somebody else
weird.
to say, wait, he got cut."
Yeah, it was very interesting, but yeah.
All right, so just to give some love to a couple like training camp guys who still odds stacked against them making the roster. I would say it's stock up for our Greg Ward and Carlton Agudosi.
Yeah.
Ward obviously is in his third training camp, so it kind of makes sense that he knows what's going on. He played in the AAF. We've talked about it a little bit. It still seems unlikely he makes the team because I'm just not sure what kind of role he would actually play here, unless receivers or Mac Hollins still hurt or they trade Aguilar or something like that. But he's been really good. They target him as much as anybody, especially the second team. Agudosi has more been out of nowhere. He's 6'6", and you and I had talked about, you just have to throw the ball in the right spot. And it seems like they figured out where to throw it with him, and he tends to come down with it. Still don't know if he can do anything but those red zone or sideline plays, but if he's a niche player like that, that's still a unique weapon to have. He's intrigued me quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, he is intriguing. And to that extent, in that same token, Josh Hawkins, cornerback, who has struggled against Deshaun Jackson, but everybody has, but he seems to make a play every single practice. And then I'd say the other guy that I think has started to kind of mount some momentum is Alex Singleton. I think he's looked good as a blitzer. I really need to see him in games before I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe he's got a shot.
That's the thing with a few of these guys, especially those receivers that I just mentioned. Them getting a lot of catches in practice is great. And Carlton Agudosi was famous for that at Rutgers.
Right.
He was really good in practice, and they never got him the ball in games. So he's especially one I'm going to kind of curious to watch on Thursday.
It's a shame because Osman really was building.
Yeah, Osman. He was going to be a guy they've been going out of their way to hype him up a lot. Yeah. Even Howie. Howie doesn't talk about bottom of the roster guys. That said something. I don't know why they were doing that, but they were doing
it. Yeah. So there's that.
We can do one more stock down, and then so I would say stock down just because of the level of hype he was getting after the minicamp would be J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He's had a few good plays in the red zone and stuff, but generally kind of just been not in the mix.
Yeah, the pass.
He's had some drops.
Some things.
Him and Carson still have to get on the same page. The ceiling is high, but maybe we overestimated what role he's going to play as a rookie.
Yeah, I'll go with another rookie in Sharif Miller, who he had a nice practice on.
Yeah, he had a sack the other day.
Was it Saturday?
Yeah, I believe Saturday.
Yeah. So he had a nice practice on Saturday. He had 2 sacks, I think. One that ended practice. I think that was the one that we're both talking about. But he's a guy I'd like to see more out of. He's about to play. He's a lifelong Eagles fan. He's about to play his first game as an Eagle. So I'm interested to see. This Titans game is going to be really interesting because I do think, even more so than normal, this is going to be a very depth-driven game. Maybe Carson gets a series or 2, but I'm expecting a lot of Nate Sudfeld, a lot of Clayton Thorson, maybe some Cody Kessler, a lot of backup linebackers because you don't want to risk any injuries.
Yes. All right. Before we go, a couple questions for you. I'm just kind of curious how your thoughts have changed and looking ahead a little bit. But first question I have is who on this roster, when you entered training camp, you thought for sure was going to make the team, or that you thought was going to make the team that now you're he's probably not going to? And then the flip side of that also. A guy you didn't think was going to make the team, and now you're maybe he makes the 53.
Paul Worlow was the guy that I was almost convinced would make the team.
You need to be on the field. Yeah,
you need to be on the field. I think he's definitely talented enough to be on the team. I think he's probably the best fit for Sam linebacker if Nigel Bradham plays middle this year. But we need to see him on the field. And I think, they haven't rushed to put him on IR. They haven't rushed to waive injure him. They haven't done anything to kind of suggest that, we're ready to move on.
They still have hopes for him, at least.
Right. And if you're gonna do that, you clearly want him on the roster. So they're gonna give him some chances to make this roster. He's a guy that even if with those chances, it's still kind of hard to kind of comprehend. Like, he's missed most of training camp. He missed pretty much all of OTAs. Like, he's coming off a major knee. It's tough. But he's a guy that I think both of us are probably hoping to see a lot out of. And then a guy that I didn't think had a shot, but is going to make the run, Nate Gary. Nate Gary has had a really strong camp from a opportunity perspective.
Yeah, and just knowing where he has to be or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that the coach is always rave about his IQ. And then just looking ahead to the preseason game, I know we've talked a lot about some of the guys, but who's a guy you're really looking forward to watching on Thursday?
It was Joe Osman. I had him circled.
I mean, it's kind of like Clayton Thorson's going to be like you and I are fans of How Did This Get Made podcast. It's like a good, bad movie, you know? Like I'm looking forward to watching Clayton Thorson.
You just came up with our post-game podcast. It's literally going to be all Clayton Thorson. No, I'm just kidding.
How did this get thrown?
Ooh, I like that.
It just point to one bad Clayton.
That should be a segment moving forward. How did this idea even happen? So we can diagnose a play. Anyway,
I like that.
So there's three guys that I've in my brain I really want to see. I want to see how Nate Herbig does at center, because I want to see if they can challenge Stefan Wisniewski at center. Carlton Agudosi is another guy that I think we really need to see, and then Miles Sanders. Like, come on, come
on. We haven't talked about him yet. I'm excited to watch Josh Sweat because there's been a lot of talk about how good he's been in camp and stuff. When you're going against Mailata, I mean, he's been battled with Dillard. It's been a good battle, but I'm curious to see him against a veteran because he'll probably get some reps against the other team's first and second team.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I don't know how much they're going to play, like Vinny Curry.
Yeah.
Brandon Graham probably will barely play. So Josh Sweat, I'm curious about. I'm trying to think if there's any other. I'm curious.
Give me two others.
TJ Edwards, because he hasn't stood out yet, but I think they do have high. There's a job to be won in the linebacker room.
I spoke to him. He's pretty confident.
Yeah, I mean he's smart. Like he was one of the more highly regarded undrafted free agents. And I guess since you did all offense, I'll do all defense. My third one will be Sidney Jones. Actually, I want to see if he can do this in games because he looked pretty good in training camp last year too. Number one, he's got to stay healthy. That's nothing you can really control about that. So if he can come out and however long he's in there, I imagine he'll play a decent amount at least because they probably want to see what he has. But,
for sure, you got to test him.
Yeah. They play the Titans, by the way, because I don't think their opponent really matters in the preseason. But
it doesn't.
Except for the Ravens week because they're doing the whole practice.
Right, that'll be interesting. And you look at the connections to the roster, it's Cyprian pretty much.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So you don't really
Teron Davenport on the other end.
Yeah, Teron. Yeah, that's what we're excited. That's who I want to see in the preseason. I've already text messaged him. It's going to be a good time.
He's killing it over there.
Just killing it.
He's the most dressed man in Philly when he was here. Now he took his talents to Nashville. Yeah,
we've been lacking style ever since.
Yeah, nobody can wear a bow tie like that, man.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing Elliott with a bow tie.
Yeah.
That'd be funny. Hey, we gave him a shout out. My last thought, though, as we close out this week of practice, I understand the angst that comes with injuries, but we have said literally for months, this is one of the deepest rosters in the NFL, and this team will go as far as Carson Wentz goes, and neither of those things have changed. Yeah. So if you're panicking over Camus Grugier-Hill and Crevon LeBlanc,
those are not backups, but
they're role players.
Yeah, role players. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're not, and there was no. What I would be concerned about is we want to eventually see some updates about Fletcher Cox and Ronald Darby and Nigel Bradham. I mean, we've kind of taken that for granted that they're out there and that they're going to be back.
If it gets closer to the season, then you could start worrying about those guys probably. But.
Yeah, but we're a month away. Yeah. So
everybody,
there's time.
Relax.
It's what Zack has to tell me via text message at least 4 times a day.
All right, so we'll end on that note. We'll get you guys a post-game pod on Thursday. And then we'll get you some more pods next week. We're about to get into games. I'm excited. I can only get so much practice with that before we start going a little crazy. But we'll end on that note. Go enjoy your Grateful Dead playlist and have a great night.